We are at 6:30, so I'm going to call this regular meeting of the City Council and WPCA to order. For the record, today is Monday, June 21st, 2021. We are in the City Hall Auditorium. Participating today via Zoom, I have Councilman Waldron and Councilman Oliver. Attending in person in the auditorium, Councilwoman Wagner, Councilman Rubino, and Councilman Cavanero. Absent today is Councilwoman Ruette. Before we jump into the agenda, could we kindly stand and pledge the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. All right. Item 1 on the agenda is I will entertain a motion to open the meeting to the public in accordance with Section 4E of the City Council WPCA meeting rules of procedure.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Cavanero, and seconded by Councilwoman Wagner. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? We are open to the public. Is there anyone from the public wishing to address the board at this time? Yes, please, at the microphone, state your name, please.
Good evening, my name is Carrie Hona, and I live at 603 New Torrington Road. I know the Board of Finance has already recommended a budget for both the city and the Board of Ed, and I realize that you may not feel you're in a position to change the overall money spent, but I'm asking you to reallocate the percentage that goes to the city and the Board of Education. The municipal budget was increased 4.1%, and the school budget was increased 0.1%, or $95,000. The increase to the Board of Education budget was just 4% of the entire increase to the city budget. $95,000 can't possibly cover the contractual obligations from just the teachers and other union contracts. Those are contracts this body actually approved, so I would assume at a minimum you would allocate enough to pay for those increases. In 2021 to 2022, the city budget will be 76% of the Board of Ed budget. By conservative estimates, the city has less than half of the employees of the Board of Ed. Torrington always has its challenges, but meeting those challenges should include shared sacrifice by both the city departments and the Board of Ed. The Board of Education has been making great strides to reduce costs for taxpayers. Due to the painstaking work of the professionals in our schools and central office, there's been a huge reduction in the special ed budget, outside contractor and transportation costs. We've closed an elementary school and consolidated the others. Our school leaders have been doing their part to control costs, and that savings should be able to go towards improving our offerings at school and keeping our buildings up to date and safe. When I talked to voters last fall about building a new school, the number one reason to vote no wasn't the cost. It was the city doesn't take care of the buildings we have now, so why should we build a new one? If the city owned an apartment building and the students and teachers were tenants, the city honestly would be considered a slumlord. This budget approved on June 18th has no money for capital improvements and suggests that the TMS roof and Vogel-Wetmore roof go to referendum in the fall. Anyone with common sense would realize it's nearly impossible to get a referendum like that passed after a big referendum was passed last year. We have assurances that the TMS roof would be covered under the American Rescue Plan Act, so why wouldn't we do that at no cost to Torrington taxpayers? As for the Vogel roof, it's already 15 years past its life expectancy. If it doesn't pass at referendum, how are you going to fix it? Voters put their faith in city leaders by voting yes for a new middle school and high school. I'm asking you to display the leadership necessary to respect the wishes of our voters and start caring for our existing buildings. Please add additional money back into the Board of Education budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hona. Still open to the public? Yes.
Members of the City Council, my name is Bailey Hona, and I also live at 603 New Harmonton Road. Today was my last day of 8th grade at Torrington Middle School. I am here to ask you to take a second look at the budget and reconsider a very small percentage the Board of Finance decided to give to our school system. When I finished 5th grade, it was the last year East School was open as a public elementary school. One of those reasons it had to close was it had not been taken care of properly and many things needed to be fixed. That made it too expensive to keep open. In my 3 years at TMS, there have been wet, leaking ceiling tiles, and our classrooms go between being extremely hot and absolutely freezing, even when the weather is exactly the same. And I was lucky. There are other students who don't even have air conditioning, which means we had to close early and lose even more time in our classrooms on top of the time lost due to COVID. I say all of this because I want you to realize that our school buildings are not being repaired when they first have issues. Instead, the city chooses to wait until the repairs get extremely expensive and we have no choice to fix it, sometimes in a near emergency situation. The middle school roof must be replaced. The Vogel-Wetmore roof, where my littlest sister goes, also needs to be replaced. It is 15 years overdue. I know that my parents plan and save so that when their roof needs to be replaced, they have a way to pay for it. And I'm asking our city leaders to be responsible and do the same thing. I'm excited that hopefully by my senior year at THS, we'll have a new school building. It is my hope that you put the money aside bit at a time, so when the new building needs repairs, we won't wait until it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. Still open to the public. Members from the public wishing to address the council? Seeing and hearing no additional members of the public, we'll move into item number 2. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the special education meeting held jointly with the Board of Public Safety on June 2nd, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner, seconded by Councilman Rubino. Questions on the motion?
Second.
Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstention from Councilman Cavanero. Item 3, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the public hearing held jointly with the Board of Finance on June 3rd, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner,
Second.
and seconded by Councilman Rubino. Are there questions on the motion or the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Hearing none, motion carries, sorry. Item 4, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting held jointly with the Board of Finance on June 3rd, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Councilwoman Wagner, seconded by Councilman Rubino. Questions on these minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the public hearing held June 7th, 2021.
I'll move it.
Thank you,
Second.
Councilman Rubino, seconded by Councilwoman Wagner. Questions on the motion and the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held June 7th, 2021.
Move 6.
Thank you, Councilman Rubino.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Wagner. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the public hearing held June 14th, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner,
Second.
and seconded by Councilman Rubino. Questions on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting held June 14th, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner, seconded by Councilman Cavanero. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9, I'll entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Stephanie Burr as a regular member of the Arts and Culture Commission to fill the remainder of a 4-year term expiring December 31st, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner,
Second.
and seconded by Councilman Rubino. Yes, Councilman Rubino. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 10 is a presentation, or I should say a wrap-up of what happened with the budget approval, 21-22 budgets. And if, okay, so we're pulling up a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm just going to walk through these pages with you. This is slightly updated from the presentation that was made to the Board of Finance on the 15th. So starting with page 1 is really an opportunity for us to look back in the development of this budget. You will recall last year being the pandemic response budget adoption. This was a year where, knowing that there was a tremendous amount of unknown in regard to what was going to be needed by both the city and the Board of Education to continue to address the health crisis that the pandemic was bringing forth. At the time, the schools were 100% in distance learning, not knowing how long that was going to be and whether or not that was going to impact the fiscal year 2021 budget. At that time, budget increases were significant, and in order to accomplish that, the city utilized non-recurring revenues, non-recurring meaning one-time revenue sources, and in this case, our fund balance of $2.5 million. The BOE surplus, at the time they were working on a $700,000 surplus, our internal service fund of $2 million, and we had earmarked COVID response for PPE and hand sanitizer and stuff that we needed here at City Hall, or that the Board of Education may need in continuing to feed families throughout the remainder of the year, another $400,000. So $5.6 million of one-time revenues were utilized to balance the 2021 budget year. We knew at the time that a $5.6 million one-time use was going to be creating some budget instability, and that we were going to have to implement a strategy to repair or replace those lost or those one-time revenues, that hole that was created in doing this emergency pandemic response budget. Next page, please. ARPA. So as we all know, and throughout the entire budget process, we were relying on, praying for, hoping that the ARPA funds, that's the American Rescue Plan funds, would be the answer to getting capital projects completed and thereby reducing the impact to taxpayers. However, these funds can only be used for funding objectives as itemized in the U.S. Treasury Guidance documents. The document that you see here on this screen, I provided a hard copy for those of you that are here. This is the Cliff Notes version of those funding objectives. The first thing that we needed to look at was whether or not, forgive me, I'm going to grab one from. And I want to be clear that funding objectives for municipal American Rescue Plans is different than funding objectives for educational rescue plan money. Educational rescue plan money is being funneled through the state and the State Department of Education. The municipal rescue plan funds are funneled through the U.S. Treasury directly to the municipality. There is nobody at the state that can give us guidance on how to spend this. They can only caution us that they have the same documents that we have presented by the U.S. Treasury, and that we must read those documents carefully before we expend funds. There is no pre-eligibility submittal for any of our spending proposals. It isn't like I can send a list and say, here's my punch list, and this is how much it's going to cost for me to accomplish that punch list. We want pre-approval before we go ahead and expend the funds. The onus is on the municipality to, in strict adherence to the funding objectives presented, spend the money, file our reports on how the money was spent, and if we misspend the money, the U.S. Treasury comes and takes it back.
Point of order, Mayor?
Yes. Yeah, please, it's a discussion. Yeah.
The reporting is to the state or to
Federal government,
the federal government?
correct. There's no reporting to the state on any of this.
Okay, I'll wait till you finish.
Okay, so the document that that you see on this page is, you have a hard copy of this. The funding objectives are to support urgent COVID-19 response efforts, to continue to decrease the spread of the virus and bring the pandemic under control is funding objective 1. Funding objective 2, to replace lost public sector revenue to strengthen support for vital public services and help retain jobs. This is the one area, and I'm going to spend a little time and talk on that. This is the one area where we had hoped through the whole budget process that we can demonstrate a loss of tax revenue. Because if we can demonstrate a loss of tax revenue, there are broad spending, there's broad spending latitude. Lost revenue could be used to fund a multitude of operating expenses, capital expenses, programmatic expenses. This lost revenue, they gave you a very specific methodology for calculating lost revenue. And, a little sheet that you just plug in your numbers and it pretty much calculates the revenue for you. And according to all of our calculations, the city of Torrington could not demonstrate a significant loss of revenue. So we have no money to spend in that broad latitude of spending opportunities.
The loss is all on the private retail side, no doubt.
Well, even larger municipalities that don't have a private tax collector that provides 100% of your tax revenue. If they lost tax revenue, they lost programmatic income, investment income. Those are the municipalities that probably can demonstrate a significant loss of revenue. And this was a methodology for those, because that does have a significant impact on a municipality's ability to, keep the road work happening, keep bridges, under construction, provide all of those various public safety services, police and fire. And so we really hoped through this whole budget deliberation that we were going to find that this was a piece that would fill in a little bit of the funding gap that was created with the $5.6 million one-time revenue uses last year. Moving into the third funding objective is to support immediate economic stabilization for households and businesses. In this area, we can do things such as provide assistance for utilities, for rent, for any of those losses that families experienced as a result of the pandemic and unemployment, or that landlords experienced with rental income that wasn't paid. So there's businesses lost revenue. So there's a limited way that we can spend those funds to support households and businesses, but it's strictly within, I'm calling these pools of funding. And the final one was to address systemic public health and economic challenges that have contributed to an unequal impact of the pandemic. So a little bit, two-thirds of the way down the page, you'll see further examples of how those funds could be spent, replacing water and sewer infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, premium pay for essential workers. So no use for infrastructure improvements. I can't build a new animal control facility with this fund. I cannot repair a roof at a middle school or an elementary school, or the salt shed roof at our street department. I can't replace or repair the elevators. I shouldn't say that. There might be if we figure out a way, the emergency operations center. But, we're really, truly handcuffed with the ability to use these funds in any broad latitude. There is one area in the U.S. Treasury eligibility that we also spent a little bit of time looking at, and this is called the Equity Focused Services area. It would fall under systemic public health and economic challenges. This some additional flexibility for the hardest hit communities and families to address health disparities, invest in housing, and address educational disparities, and promote healthy childhood environments. It's only applicable to qualified census tracts, other disproportionately impacted areas, and when provided to the tribal governments. This is the one area where it talks about addressing for educational support programs that would help fill the gap wherever there was a gap in learning as a result of the pandemic. Things like the ESL program that the Board of Education was asking for. It would be allowable for use for mental health support. So the social workers that the Board of Education was proposing would qualify. But again, these are programmatic, not infrastructure.
Right.
So even with this, and Torrington does have 3 census tracts that would qualify, and I do believe our 3 downtown schools fall within that census tract. So those programs for those schools would, we believe, qualify, and it's something that we would, go ahead. It's a conversation, feel free.
Would this apply to hiring extra teachers?
Yes. In the census tract, to support learning gaps,
Yep.
things like computers, for our poor families. The way this is written, I could actually buy a computer for a poor family. It doesn't make sense for us to do that. And it makes sense for us to buy a computer for the school, who then delivers it to the student in need, and then collects that computer at the end of the year, so that there's a methodology for making sure that the computers are being used in such a way that they benefit a larger audience.
How are you workshopping this? I mean, clearly, there's clearly, clearly you have to thread the needle here.
We do.
But in this woke environment, I think we have a lot of, I think there's a lot of emotional support for being able to maybe expand the definition of what meets this criteria beyond what's strictly here.
One of the things I thought of was looking at healthy childhood environments, and wouldn't a roof come in under that?
No, it does not. The HVA system might, but a roof does not. Lead paint abatement qualifies.
Right.
The replacement of lead.
Milder doesn't.
But if we can get significant, it seems to me we should certainly make the attempt. We should, go for the long ball here. Given Torrington's demographics
Yes.
of getting, a bunch of this money being able to be allocated here, right?
Yes.
On the programmatic side, which then frees up money for the board to divert to their capital.
Yes. So, yes,
How
you will see in the budget presentation that was one of the things that I addressed.
Okay.
So I want to go back to Councilwoman Wagner's question about the healthy childhood environments. That was not schools. Those are homes.
Yeah.
So if there's lead bait, and I did have a conversation with Torrington Area Health District to talk about, is there a lead paint abatement program that we could develop that maybe mirrors the LAMP program? Those are conversations that we can have, but the educational disparities are programmatic.
Yeah.
And I agree with Councilman Cabanero, trying to find a way to utilize these funds that best benefits our taxpayers our students, our schools, was the goal in looking at how do we balance our budget, filling that $5.6 million hole that was created, and creatively creating a path forward, being able to move whatever expenses can be moved into one-time, I shouldn't say one-time, into the ARPA funding, bonded, or cut. So that's the nutshell of the ARPA. I will tell you, all of my guidance on ARPA comes from two advocacy groups that we belong to. It is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, which I believe represents, I think it's all 169 municipalities in the state, and the National League of Cities.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I would add on the National League of Cities was the other one, is the specific question that was asked is, what infrastructure projects can funds be used on? And the answer was, general infrastructure spending is not covered as an eligible use outside of water, sewer, and broadband, or above the amount allocated under revenue loss. So two things. First, do you have revenue loss? No, we don't. Do any of these infrastructure proposals fall within the water, sewer, broadband? They do not.
So broadband, by broadband, I mean, how broad is the definition of broadband?
So
Broadband terminates at a computer. I mean, so.
Well, in areas of Litchfield County, I think, has a significant issue with under-resourced broadband.
Yeah.
So here in Torrington, not so much. We just, through our COG, underwent a engineered study to determine.
It's really just the broadband
Absolutely.
itself. It's not the
Yeah.
delivery.
So anywhere that there is broadband available in the city, or there's a difference between available or access to broadband and adoption of broadband. But we tried to identify where are the areas in the city of Torrington where access doesn't exist. There are very few locations.
I get it.
So I can't expand the broadband, although I did meet with the people from Altice to talk about where there may be gaps that they plan to address in their next 3-year plan for increasing, because obviously a lot of these ARP funds are also going to those broadband providers.
Would that possibly include creating access for those families that don't have it?
Hotspots? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So, this is where you could talk about educational disparities. When you talk about, I say there's access, but not adoption. A poorer family, or a family that just doesn't want the internet connection and relies on, their own wireless through cell phone.
At home, having to be learning at home is shown, especially in the far northern parts of Litchfield County, where work and school at home was not easy for many people.
Yeah, are there metrics to that point, specifically education disparities hit by COVID, right? So you got all these kids. I mean, I know from my daughter, right, out in East LA. So many of those kids in poor communities for a whole host of reasons. Partly it's, again, technical because of, lack of computers, lack of broadband, blah, 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 but also it's the usual problems of poverty, no guardianship, all that stuff. So are there metrics that showed that, within certain demographics, there's a significant drop off in education, and that this whole stuff, the whole point of this is to remedy issues that were created by COVID, essentially in broad strokes, right? That clearly, should be a fairly significant number in Torrington of kids of additional support that's going to require more teachers, more time in classroom, all of this stuff in a significant way, not one or two, but a bunch of them.
Absolutely.
And if we can divert, I'm sorry, Mary, have you already diverted this money already?
No, absolutely not. So a question was raised, I believe, last Wednesday, the Board of Education had a meeting. A question was raised about when the municipality has to file its report for the intended uses of these funds. Because we are a non-entitlement unit or municipality, meaning we are under 50,000 in population, we are not held to the same reporting standards as our sister cities that are over 50,000 in population. So I know the Board of Education has to file their plan on how they will spend their $5 million by, I think it's August 31st. We do not have that reporting deadline.
Okay.
I will tell you, I just received notice today that our $5 million deposit was received today. We get this in 2 tranches, a total of 10. We get $5 million this year. We get $5 million next year. I can also tell you that we have already identified a number of economic development uses that will create sustainability for our local businesses and industrial sectors. That $5 million will go very quickly.
Yeah.
But addressing educational disparities is a part of the strategy that I presented to the Board of Finance as to how we could fund the Board of Education's request for $969,900 and change. And you'll see that in the pages that are coming up. 969,281 is what the Board of Education asked for its operating budget. And you'll see in the next couple of pages what my proposal to the Board of Finance was to get them the funds that they needed for the operating and a strategy for moving those capital projects forward.
Yeah. Do you feel like, so you, where you at, excuse me, where you at right now, Mayor? Are you building the arguments for this disbursement, this distribution?
For $569,281 of the ARPA money for educational purposes?
Yeah.
Yes, but also, as you'll see, as a result of the budget work that we've done, all of the budget work that our budget subcommittee, which was 2 council members, 2 Board of Safety members, 2 members of the Board of Finance, you'll see that work at the end of the day results in us finding another $2.2 million of cuts. I also need to talk to you about. So my reason for bringing this presentation to you is to talk about the $569,281, to talk about potentially putting out to referendum the 2 roof projects. It was only the middle school roof that the Board of Education identified in this current fiscal year, but they also had in their 5-year plan the Vogel-Wetmore roof. And my thought process in developing a strategy to accomplish some of these goals was bundle the roofs, perhaps bid them at the same time, economies of scale. Would you find savings, cost savings, if you get a bid and a crew is deployed, in the summer months of 2022 to take care of both of those roofs? So that now, moving forward, always my plan in everything I propose is get those big ticket items that are looming right there on our doorstep off of the radar and start planfully sinking money over the next 5 or 10 years so that we don't find ourselves in this position again. It's something that hasn't really been a commitment on anybody's part, but it's time for us to stop budgeting in this way and reach a point where referendums are the only answer.
Mayor, never mind, I don't want to editorialize. Since I left the Board of Education to come to City Council, I have been getting on my damn soapbox every year to say that education and the process of education has gotten so complex now because of so many state and federal ties, because of just a whole host of complications, that it's absolutely ridiculous that we operate in these silos, okay? I mean, again, from my experience in the corporate world, they spend endless hours every month, every year, breaking down traditional silos because they result in this kind of failure. you can predict it. And you know, it's been ignored and people just shook their heads. And quite frankly, the Board of Education is as much guilty as, the city council, everybody wanting to be in their silos, not wanting to talk to us, until it reaches the gangplank, and then coming to us for help. And, which leaves the city council in this extremely tortured roundabout way of arriving at a budget, which leaves us sort of, in this vacuum of information and dialogue with the appropriate, and therefore not only is it hard to make decisions now about what's already there, it completely negates the process of planning, to your point.
Yes.
We can't continue like this. Again, I'll get off the soapbox, but this is just emblematic of everything I've been trying to do for the last 6 years to get us all to talk together so that we can plan this stuff out and not find ourselves in this zero-sum game every damn budget season. Anyway, to that point, I'm sorry, Mayor, continue
That's all
with
right.
your presentation.
Okay, so are there any other questions on the use of the ARPA funds or the restricted use of the ARPA funds? This is a conversation that we will continue to have because in addition to developing a plan for us to be able to utilize the first $5 million tranche of money appropriately, I have assembled a team within our departments that would include the superintendent of schools to be a part of that dialogue. And from there, my intention is to bring it then to the public to help the public understand what are our limitations, and what do they want us to focus on? Mm-hmm. So this will be an ongoing exercise over the next 2 months so that by September 1st, we should be in a position to be able to move forward with strong recommendations with public support.
This is just thinking out of the box or whatever. Is there a way that we can spend some of the ARPA funds on items that we then can take what we had planned for those items and put it into the expenditures for the roof? I'm looking at the referendum and that makes me nervous about having a referendum against this. So
It does.
If we have 5 million coming in, this is just, I don't work with $5 million at home, but if I know that I am going to get something extra, stimulus payment or whatever, I can maybe take something else that I was going to do and do it because, I'll have this.
It's robbing from Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. So what I'm thinking is, I know that.
I wish there was. I'm hearing your question. I
know,
wish
but
there
I
was.
think about when we say to people that we're going to be doing economic development, they don't always understand that. So I'm just thinking if there's some projects that we could include.
My limitations are right here.
I understand that.
And I've been through this budget. I agonized over how do I get this to a point where we can move any of these things. Our IT department, I looked at that thinking, were there things in the IT department that I could move? There isn't. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard spot.
If the funding that comes in is limited to that,
Yes.
then funding that we might have been planning to spend on some of those items that fall into that very narrow category could be put over on a different side of the balance sheet.
We have none now. I have $15,000 in our economic development budget for marketing.
Oh, I understand that.
Our economic development budget is salaries and $15,000 for marketing.
Oh, I understand.
We don't have those resources that I could move out of our operating budget into this so that we can, try to, nickel and dime a sum of money that will get these other projects done.
Oh, no,
Go ahead.
I might as well step in. The reimbursement factor for the middle school and high school was increased, correct?
It was, yes.
From which percentage? From
I understand it's 85%.
67 to 85.
From 62 to 85, yes,
Okay, so roughly $40 million worth of bondings we don't have to do.
that is correct.
So this is $6 million worth of bonding.
It's 3 million for the middle school Vogel Wetmore
Right.
roof and a proposal
For the
and
animal
for
control.
the animal control. And that's only if the application that I put in for the earmarks under the ARPA and Representative Johanna Hayes picked up that torch for us and submitted the request for the animal control facility. If that doesn't come through for us, then I would also put the animal control out to bond,
So
or referendum, I should say. And let's talk a little bit about that referendum. Go ahead, you have
We
any
also
questions?
have to think about the new safety facility.
Yes,
And the, we're
yes,
bringing stuff forward here, we might as well bring it all.
yes.
And that being around, I don't know, Ray, I know you're working on it, but I'm looking at probably 25 to 30 million.
Probably in that range.
So we're right at the number,
that 40 million.
the 40 million.
I know, but I hear Ms. Horna speaking. She knows these numbers. She lived and breathed them for 3 months, getting that referendum passed last fall. I don't think that I'm in a position where I could recommend that we bond a $30 million public safety complex. We really haven't done the feasibility study for that yet. I think that's a little cart before the horse kind of thing. And while I'm hearing 85% reimbursement rate, I do worry, is it a straight 85% against 160 million? Or is it 85% of those expenses that are qualified for reimbursement? Because what do we know? We know we're putting administrative offices in the building. There are things that are happening in that building that might not qualify for state reimbursement. So I don't think it's a straight 85% of 160 million. It's 85% of something. And until we know what that is, I would be reluctant to recommend that we overbond. However, I agree with Councilman Rubino to put a $3 million 2 roof projects out at a time when we know we have these savings. We know that it's going to be a much lower bonded amount for the school makes sense. Do it for a shorter period of time. Do it for 10 years. Don't do it for 20 years. It's one of those things, and I'm going to use the analogy Councilwoman Wagner was using. You know that you have something that you have to do. You have to repair a roof. It's leaking. You have to repair those windows. They're falling out of the building. It's something you must do. It makes sense that you're going to borrow to do it if you don't have available resources in your checking account. So that's where I find myself on last Tuesday morning when it became abundantly clear to me that there was not going to be a $3 million distressed municipality allocation for the city. If that $3 million was there, that roof project was in the budget. There was no question it was going to happen. But as soon as we learned that $3 million was not available to us, I was forced to scramble and figure out a way to accomplish the goals that the Board of Education had presented to the Board of Finance in those public hearings, and still find a way to accomplish the city's goals. And that's where we are right now. If we can walk through the rest of the slides, and then we can wrap this up with, I won't say a nice bow, but at least a little clearer understanding of what was happening here in budget development. During the budget development, I heard multiple times, what about your grand list growth? You had 2.2% grand list growth. What does that equate? That equated $2 million, 1.98, almost $2 million in additional revenue. That $2 million reduced the $5.6 million hole we created. So now we're looking at a $3.6 million hole. If I had that $3 million that was appropriated in the governor's budget and appropriations budget, it didn't get swiped from the governor's budget. It was included in appropriations budget. And a number of municipalities were caught short shrift learning at noon on Tuesday that those distressed municipality funds were no longer available. I have 5 municipalities right here. I was looking at their budgets that approved their budgets, including those distressed municipal funds. We were fortunate. We caught it before we adopted our budget, so it isn't like I'm trying to scramble to figure out how to fill that $3 million hole. ECS, next slide, please. What do we know? So when we talk about the Board of Education's budget, and I am always loath to discuss the funds that the Board of Education gets outside of what is appropriated by the municipality, because those funds are so pigeonholed. So where they get approximately $4 million in IDEA grants, in Pell grants, in a number of miscellaneous grants, where they received another $2.4 million in ESSER money for the pandemic. Those funds are tied directly to strategies, and they can be very short-lived. You lose those funds, although IDEA and Pell and the Title I's grants are usually very secure and stable. But Alliance district funding is always tricky in the way that people understand them. So I wanted to prepare this chart so that everybody understands how ECS and Alliance district funding works. Every year, the state appropriates ECS money. That's your education cost share. And that sum is given per capita. For an Alliance district, they don't give you the ECS money and then give you another grant on top of the ECS money so that the schools can create these additional programs and hire additional staff. That we have been hearing repeatedly. Once the Alliance district goes away, those funds go away, and then what? We've got to figure out how to absorb all those staff members. That's not how it works. How it works is the ECS money is provided. The amount of the ECS funds that are given to the municipality was frozen in the year 2012. That sum is $23,933,343. Anything above $23,933,343 is paid directly to the school, and the school files a plan with the state as to how they're going to spend that additional appropriation. The state approves it, and those are the controls that the state puts on an underperforming school system. It's a way for the state to say, this is what you should be accomplishing with reading or math or, all these other things.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
Just to confirm,
Yes.
You're saying that additional money is the Alliance money?
So in the bottom line of this graph, you will see in 2018, it was $549,000. This year, it is $3,925,890. That's another $900,000 than they received last year.
So that's how it comes in essentially in addition to the ECS. Those are the Alliance strings.
Those are the Alliance strings, and the Board of Education will provide a spending plan for that, and it's building on it. Last year, it was $3 million. They'll show their extra programs and strategies that they'll bring in, but there's an increase in their spending capability of $900,000 over last year outside of their operating budget, which is approved by the Board of Finance. And additional, I know there are grants there for the ESL programs, and there's another new grant out there that I will tell you the superintendent is absolutely amazing at chasing those dollars and putting them to work for the district. So again, an extra $900,000 coming to the school system outside of their operating budget request as part of the Alliance district. To unwind the Alliance district, what happens is, once the school system attains all of the goals that the state has accomplished for them, those alliance funds don't go away. They now get paid to the municipality as a regular ECS payment, and all of the programs and expenses that the Board of Education has been building then get folded into their operating expenses. So there's that 1 year when they come off of Alliance District designation that their operating budget is going to bump $4 million. And the ECS money is going to bump $4 million. It's a net zero game. But
None of this alliance money is tied to non-special ed performance metrics?
it's all non-special ed, I believe. I don't believe the special, you know what, I downloaded the plan that they filed the year before last. That was the last one that was available on the SDE.
Interesting.
I'm not sure, yeah.
Okay.
It's all designed for the learning gaps and how do we raise test scores and how do we, fill in those learning gaps.
Should we read this increase in alliance funding to read that we're getting worse rather than better yearly? We're getting worse.
No, I would not say that.
Giving us more money to solve the problem every year?
Yeah, yes.
And
it isn't even so much more money to solve the problem. Every municipality that is not an alliance district received more money in ECS.
Okay.
You can't solve a problem in a year or two, so it's.
Absolutely.
Excuse me?
Takes a while to build that program to solve the
Well,
problem.
how many years does it take?
We haven't been in a list, but we've been in alliance district for 3 years.
Since 2018.
Yeah.
This is our fifth year.
As you're developing programs and you're increasing staff to take care of that, it takes a while to get to that goal that you want. It's incremental.
Yeah, but does the city have metrics? This gets to.
We do not. No, this is a Board of Education function. There's
I know.
absolutely, yeah, and I know, and it goes to, against the grain of what you said earlier, that we're working in silos.
Well,
I know.
here we are.
Yeah,
Here we are.
I know.
Okay, we don't even have, again, people want to come to the city council and board of finance to reverse their decisions on things. And we, as far as I'm concerned, my decisions need to be based on metrics. Show me the numbers, show me what your plan is, show me what your 1, 3, 5 year plan is for moving us off. Show me the funding that you expect to expend to do this, what you need to do this. And then let's see, again, I recommend it many times, 3 times a year, twice a year I'd settle for. Just come to the board, city council at least, and I would assume city council, board of finance, a joint meeting, at least twice a year, ideally 3 times a year, beginning, middle, end. Just tell us how you're doing. Just tell us how you're doing, what the roadblocks are, what we can anticipate in terms of budgetary requests for the next year, because this didn't work out as well as expected. This worked out better than expected. That to me is the way to manage a relationship between the city and the Board of Education. Otherwise, I've just got a bunch of numbers here. I have no idea what $3.9 million is going to buy me. I have no idea if this is going to, all I know is that in terms of overall performance of our school district to absolute metrics that are fairly universal, we keep falling further and further behind. We're getting worse and worse and worse at doing this kind of stuff. I don't want to hear about how many acceptances we got to Ivy League schools. Those are false numbers, meaning that every single year since I was a kid in high school, you've got a small percentage of very, very smart kids who each get into multiple Ivy League schools. And if 4 kids got into 5 Ivy League, that's 20 Ivy League admissions. That doesn't mean 20 kids got in. It's not a real number. And I don't care who you are. These kids could be in a cave, really, really smart kids that we all grew up with. Those kids are going to get into these schools no matter what. It is not a metric to be used against. What I want to see is averages, whether it's SAT scores or just the state, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the state is using to measure performance, we should be apprised of that and how we're doing with our plan going forward, and if I have, to me, what the Board of Finance did, this is my personal opinion, but the Board of Finance did, quite honestly and simply, it was a vote of no confidence. That's how I read it. It's a vote of no confidence.
Well, if you allow me to go through the rest of the slides, I don't think it was a vote of no confidence, because I will tell you that the superintendent's presentation to the Board of Finance where she absolutely tied, you give me this much money, these are the programs that we will bring in, and this is the result you will see. She actually was tying it to a return on investment,
Okay.
which I do believe she's already demonstrated an ability to do, because it was 2 years ago that she presented I hate to say that Superintendent Lebomsky presented a plan for special education, creating the eSchool Ed Advance partnership. That investment, she predicted what the savings would be, and those savings did happen.
Yeah.
So I would disagree that it was a vote of no confidence. I would just venture to say that once you look at what was done, you'll understand what the strategy was.
Okay.
That I think will also answer Ms. Hona's question. So.
Then I stand corrected.
Well, I won't say corrected, but I think it does, it depends on the lens that you're looking at it.
Have we actually asked if this roof replacement is an ARPA expense or not? I mean, can we?
Yes. General infrastructure spending is not covered as an eligible use outside of water, sewer, and broadband investments or above the allocated under
I
revenue
know it
loss.
says that, but I'm just wondering on the state level, if there's someone else.
It's not a state decision. These are federal funds that I answer to the U.S. Treasury on. The question that the superintendent posed to somebody at the state, I think it was Mr. Costas, he has a Greek name, to Diamantis. The question, I'm not even sure that she asked the question. She said, could the municipal funds be used to replace a roof? And he said, yes. She didn't say, the city has no lost revenue. Would this be eligible under any of these other funding objectives? I always say that. You're going to get an answer to the question you ask.
Because he didn't have the other information.
Exactly. So I asked the same question to Martin Heft in the same department, OPM. And his answer was, here are your guidelines. Look at paragraph 2.1. Be careful, if there is no loss of revenue, they don't qualify. So it's the question, you get the answer to the question you asked. I don't know what question was asked. So, and I was copied on his response, and there was little more than a yes. Whereas Mr. Heft provided, here's your FAQ, here's yes. Yeah. So I'm not saying that their information isn't correct. I just worry that the question they asked wasn't.
And I appreciate your work on behalf of this. I know this has been tedious, and I know that as a member of the budget committee, we had high hopes for the ARPA funding. So.
Oh, definitely. Every meeting we said that. I'm going to skip this. This was, this talks about the budget expense requests. So if we can move the general revenue. This is just one slide I wanted to spend a moment on. These revenues are flat, absolutely flat. Now on the BOE ECS, this is the $27,977,520 is the amount that is in the state's budget. Keep in mind that $23,933,000 and change is what gets paid to the city, frozen as of the 2012 year, and all the rest of that gets paid directly to the Board of Education. Moving on to the next page. This is where I recognize that with the revenues that are available to us through state grants, departmental income, that we had a significant hole to fill. So I had to go back and look at what are those non-recurring revenue sources that may be available to offset the impact of the budget requests. I'm on the right page, right? Page 8. Yes. So we went back and looked at the internal service fund. During the pandemic, there was I shouldn't say limited. There was much less use than under normal circumstances. Again, I think a lot of people were delaying those elective procedures. They weren't seeing their physicians on a regular basis. So we looked at what was in that account, and we came to the conclusion that we would be comfortable utilizing $2 million from that fund again this year. Looking at the fund balance, in relation to the Board of Finance's policy on what is an appropriate sum that should be held in the fund balance, that number one secures or insures our bond rating. Fund balance or rainy day fund, everybody thinks, oh, that's just the money you build up so that you can, spend it on these one-time expenses. These fund balances serve a purpose. The bond rating companies look at that fund balance through the lens of, do you have sufficient funds in your rainy day account to sustain the municipality for at least 2 months should you find that there is a significant reduction in revenue? And I'm one of those people that says, all right, so when was the last time we had a significant loss of revenue? We have a tax collector that provides 100% tax collection. We've been doing that for, 60 years. And lo and behold, in 2018 was the year that the state decided that they were not going to give us $20 million in ECS money. And that was the year that the state budget did not happen. That was the year that we were left scrambling and pulling together what are all of those available resources, fund balance being a primary one, that would carry us for at least 2 months while the state was working its way through its budget crisis. So fund balance is not just a savings account. There is a purpose to this, and it has a direct relation to our bond rating. Looking at that funding policy that the Board of Finance adopted in 2017, felt comfortable saying that we could bring that fund balance down to 9.5%. The policy says they wanted to be between 7 and 10. They wanted to be at 10, but we should never go below 7% of our operating expenses. So we knew that if we took this 1.6 million out of here, we would still be okay. We were looking at the Board of Education's budget surplus. This is year over year. June 30th is the end of the fiscal year. Surpluses then return to the fund balance, or the Board of Education does have a statutory provision where they could request that their surplus be turned over to a capital reserve account so that they could use. It's not just capital, it's a reserve account that they could use it for one-time operational expenses or capital projects. This $444,000 was identified by Ed Aram as a projection that they thought that they would be landing on. And in fact, I have already received a letter from Mr. Aram requesting the Board of Finance approve the transfer of those funds. And here you see my ARPA with an asterisk at $569,281. This is, you'll see with my recommendations, the Board of Education asked for $969,281. With budget approval out of operating, I proposed that $400,000 be funded out of the general fund and $569,281 ESL, social workers, paras, could all fall under this, under that eligibility tract, which gives them the full $969,281 they asked for. It did not, however, give them money to do those roof projects. So this is where I looked at, what do we do about the roof project and the animal control facility? And that's what that $6 million is. I'm going to tell you, I did this between 12:30 Tuesday afternoon and 4:30. So I had 4 hours to figure out, what do we do when we learned that $3 million was not coming to the municipality? And again, I state this, I was not the only municipality that was caught short shrift. I have the budgets of 5 of the municipalities, and those are the 5 that I could find this afternoon that had budgeted. It's in their budget that they had already approved and established their mill rate, expecting that money. And we learned at noon when I was in a CCM meeting that it wasn't coming. So here we are, mill rate increase based on what was presented, both the Board of Education and the municipality, based on the $35 million of regular revenues, based on motor vehicle taxes, which are frozen at 45 mils, and utilizing, it then brought us down to $95,591 that I would need, that the taxpayers would have to cover. That would have resulted in a 5.79 mill rate increase. So then I said, let's go back and let's look at those non-recurring revenues, our internal service fund and fund balance. Fund balance actually was, I said 1.6 on the earlier page. It was 1.6 plus another 2, 1.5, which I thought at the time was the amount we were going to be using for the middle school roof. And recognizing I couldn't do that for the roof, we moved it into covering the operating. So we then were able to bring the net impact to the taxpayers down to $90,491,345. That is still a 3.8 mill rate increase. Next page. And this is where the recommendations went to the Board of Finance. My recommendation to the Board of Finance at the time was to reduce their operating by $569,281, which resulted in an increase of $400,000 over the fiscal 2021 funds. I want to clarify, Ms. Hona said it's $95,000. Operating budgets and capital budgets are approved separately. It is actually at $304,000 in their capital that was not funded. So this increase in their operating from the general fund would be $400,000, and $569,281 I am proposing to fund through the ARPA. I further recommended that we reduce the Board of Education capital request, which was $2,995,898. That included their technology and the roof, some security work, some curbing for a parking lot. But if we reduce that capital request, we zero it out. The recommendation was that we bond or put out to referendum the roof for both the middle school and Vogel Whitmore. I will add that when we learned that the $3 million was not coming to us as a distressed municipality, we also learned that that there was a new bill that was proposed as part of the bond bill. I had the bill number and I apologize. That creates a community investment fund called the Community Investment Fund 2030. That no guidance has been provided on that. That is proposing to create millions of dollars available to distressed municipalities and PICs. Those are preferred investment communities. And there is a possibility that these might qualify, but I just don't know. Time is very short. If we're going to agree to putting those roofs out to referendum, we have to make some decisions very quickly. And even if it goes to referendum and they are approved, if we don't bond the money, we don't bond the money. As long as we have the authority to bond the money, we're okay. That buys us time to figure out where else we might be able to find funds, grants, that doesn't necessarily require us to bond that money. And even if it passes and we find there are no other resources to do that roof work would happen in the summer anyways when kids are not in school. And bonding wouldn't occur until late next spring. So referendum is getting authorization. It doesn't mean we've done this. It's still
For the animal shelter the first time.
Correct.
Yeah.
We haven't bonded that money.
Right.
The middle school windows, we bonded, or we went to referendum for that. We did not bond that money. It's my understanding that the middle school middle school windows does qualify for some funding that the Board of Education got. So when we go to referendum, not only are we saying, your high school reimbursement rate is much better than it was, saving the 40 million that you identified. And the windows, which is $700,000, does not need to be bonded. So I'm inclined to think that, any reasoned voter would recognize that this is a smart thing to do, that controls the mill rate, that gets those projects done, and better prepares us to be a little more planful for the next time those roofs need to be repaired. I also asked the Board of Finance to commit to allowing the Board of Education to move $444,000 into capital reserve to cover the additional capital expenses and a turf field allocation that they've been setting aside every year for the past 3 or 4 years for the eventual replacement of that turf field. I also committed at that time to identify any additional qualified expenses addressing educational disparities that might potentially be moved to ARPA under the qualified census tract obligation funding opportunities. And I recommended that the city budget be reduced to $2,120,421. And those recommendations result in our being able to pass a budget that doesn't increase the mill rate. Could we go to the last slide, please? This is where the council has to take action, and I'm not asking you to take action this evening. This was because I anticipated the Board of Finance was going to say, what does it look like for the city to lose $2 million in their spending plans? So this was 4 hours of virtually spitballing, where will we find this $2.2 million? And these were just the highlights as to how we would fill that $2 million gap. There were small amounts in a number of the departmental budgets. The largest one is what was budgeted in our city real estate capital budget. Watching Ray turn purple. This was essentially, and Ray, in equally very little time, came up with a list that gets us to $791,000 towards the $1 million, with more work to do. And then, as you can see, moving further down, the more onerous reductions are the city pension for the police and fire department and city hall. And there is some work for me to do on that. I know it was the hardest thing for me to even put those on the table, because the one thing many of you who've been working with me over all these years knows that pensions are a sacred cow, in my opinion. We should never be short funding them. The last time this came to the council for a decision was in 2013. And I was the only council person to vote against making the cut. And here we are now putting those almost the same amount of money on the table for a cut. I will tell you that much of a good portion of this increase is directly related to our taking the action to reduce the calculation rate. We reduced our anticipated return on investment factor, which increased our annual required contribution. If we had delayed that for a year, wouldn't have been any harm or foul. So I'm uncomfortable, but not opposed to making that recommendation. And you don't need to take action on these tonight. This is just for your early consideration. And when Alice returns from vacation, we'll bring forward final proposals for the city council to take action on. That's where we are. So, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what is your plan for determining if we're gonna put this out to, the?
It doesn't require anything more than a nod from the council tonight. I would be looking for your permission to engage bond counsel and bond advisor. I've already established, we created a meeting with Mr. Lindsay and Attorney Dawson for the middle of July. It's already the middle of July. I've asked Mr. Lindsay to do a recalculation of the mill rate impact, the cost impact for debt service on the revised reimbursement rate that the high school is getting. I will ask him to show what this debt service would be on $6 million, $3 million for the school roofs, $3 million for the animal control facility. And then the Board of Finance and the City Council would have to take action on it. If you are all in favor at that time, we send it to the Secretary of State. She gives us authority to put it on the ballot. It will be on the November ballot.
All right, in anticipation that these consultants you're gonna talk to in July.
Yes.
I mean, I assume you're gonna ask them, what's it look like breaking this off, breaking the animal control center off on
Yes.
the roofs?
Absolutely.
I mean, the roofs, in my opinion, the roofs will pass by themselves.
Yes.
I think you bundle it. I think you're looking for failure there.
Absolutely. No, they would absolutely be separate questions. I would think that the recommendation would be that the roofs stay together.
Yeah.
And that the animal control be a
Yeah.
separate question.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no question about that.
Is there any way that, I mean, I don't know how to even begin to go about this, but it just seems to me this animal control center, I mean, this is a county essentially, right? I mean, again, it just strikes me that, I know going back many years, right? There are so many people who were we had state representatives who were very, very big animal lovers. And these are people who were connected to wealthy people. Is there any way that we could start thinking about funding this in, private, public, and getting PetSmart, getting sponsorship, getting, what are you're laughing at?
I'm not laughing at all. I'm going to read you an email that I got at 4:30 this afternoon, because that's exactly what I do. I am knocking on doors and peeking in windows. And so I did receive an email this afternoon from the Simon Foundation, Animal Rescue and Adoption, stating we met years ago when you toured our facility in Bloomfield. We'd like to meet with you one-on-one to discuss the Torrington, she called it a dog pound. Want to offer my assistance to see if we can help move this project forward. So I know that Ray, Drew, myself, Litchfield and Goshen met with the Simon Foundation a year ago to have this conversation.
The
Simon Foundation, that's Mark Greenberg. And in Bloomfield, it's a private animal control facility. And I believe that Hartford rents some of or pays them to do some of their animal control.
Okay.
So we're looking at everything. And again, just because a question goes on the ballot as a referendum question, if it's approved and we find another way to fund this that does not cost the taxpayers anything,
Yeah.
Absolutely, that would be the plan.
Well, or just, again, it becomes a shared expense.
Yes.
I do know people, I have no idea if this, I met with a friend of mine, ESPN does stuff, they're now doing whatever, what's it called? The animal, the formal animal, the formal dog competition.
The kennels.
Yeah. ESPN sponsored that and stuff. Yes, I was drinking with one of the
Westminster.
producers on Thursday, and I asked him, I said, do you know people there? And he says, I do. And he said, you get some sort of structured plan in place. He goes, I have no idea. He said, they're about breeding and grooming, show dog and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
That's what they do. He said, I'm not sure what their connection to it. I said, well, dog, my opinion, son of a farmer, dog people are dog people. So anyway, as this goes forward, let me know if there's any interest in trying to reach out in that direction, okay?
And as you
But
said.
I think there's
when you
tons of
mentioned-
private money that would be interested in doing this.
When you mentioned PetSmart, I was thinking that there are other organizations too that you can
Sure.
glue into this. that
Sure.
would-
I mean, I see now that I'm retired, I see millions. And, you know, I see millions of dog food. I mean, there's all kinds of sponsored now, high-end
People are
dog
pretty
food
crazy
products
about
and
their.
things, yeah. And, yeah.
Absolutely.
Go farther. I learned that as well.
And you're in
so.
charge.
You know, one of the challenges that I found, because I've been chasing every grant opportunity for these things. A lot of those grants, especially for those really pet-friendly focused groups, is that this must be a no-kill facility.
Okay.
And
Makes sense.
yes, and while we absolutely ascribe to that theory, there have been times where there hasn't been a choice.
Yeah.
And so we can't tell them, you know, that it would never happen if we know that there's, you know, a really dangerous animal.
Yeah.
So that has been one of the hurdles in us accessing some of those funds.
I'll keep them all shut.
No, and
You
you
could be chair.
Huh?
I think you could be chair of that effort.
No, I think there's people a lot more qualified than me to do that. And you're saying,
No, I'm saying that, you know, anybody who's good at telling a good story can get, you know,
I would like to be involved.
yeah.
This is not my world. I'm not, like I said, I know people at my former employer who do this kind of thing, but not in this way. And I'm just saying they may be of some help in terms of getting people involved. That's all I'm saying. And to whatever extent there's a committee, I'll certainly sign up for it.
Great, perfect.
Yeah.
Right. So no action required by the council this evening, except that just if you can give me early feedback, is it your desire to see me pursue these referendum opportunities while I continue to explore the Community Investment Fund 2030 and any other funding opportunities for any of these projects? We're okay with, all right, then I will proceed to have them do those calculations for debt service. And you can expect in July that I will bring them before the council to do a presentation with a more formal request. And we'll keep digging away at what those $2.1 million in cuts will be so that we can bring you a balanced budget. Moving into, if there are no other questions on budget, we'll move right into item 11. I need a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the municipal affordable housing plan fee for service agreement by and between the Northwest Hills Council of Government and the city of Torrington.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner.
One second.
Thank you, Councilman Rubino. Any questions on the motion or the agreement? And then I'll call it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 12, I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the facilities manager and purchasing agent and authorize the mayor to extend the current bid contract for fiscal year 2021-2022 for general plumbing and related repairs to West State Mechanical Inc. of Litchfield under the same terms and conditions as the existing rates of $90 per hour per journeyman and $60 per hour per apprentice.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner.
Second.
And seconded by Councilman Rubino. Item 13, I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the facilities manager and purchasing agent and authorize the mayor to extend the current bid contract for fiscal year 2021-2022 for HVAC services to Air Temp Mechanical Services of Southington under the same terms and conditions of the existing rates, $83 an hour for journeyman, $75 an hour for apprentice.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Waldron.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilman Rubino. Questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Before I move off of that, Ray, did you want to introduce our new facilities director? Actually, I could have waited for department heads, but
I was gonna do it at the end, but
I know, I'm sorry.
open the door, I will. So after a very long search and struggle and understanding what the city needs in regards to facilities, as I had presented our budget, not the current one, the previous one, seeking a facilities manager with the goal of bringing all of the city side facilities under a single umbrella. Whereas, taking that responsibility away from, the fire chief and the deputy fire chief and the police chief and the elderly services director and the superintendent of public works, which is the history of how our facilities have been maintained. So after a long, arduous search and approval of the funding necessary to procure, I'd like to introduce Jamie Sakura. Jamie, come on up.
That's who you are.
Jamie comes to us with an extensive background in facilities as well as energy conservation, managing energy conservation projects. So I don't know if you want to say a few words and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jamie, excited to be here, happy to be here. Hoping I can use my expertise in the energy side, dealing with utility rebates to lower the cost to the city and find alternative ways to fund projects.
Yay.
So that's what I'm.
So this whole conversation, I'm thinking, Jamie's in the room. I'm sure that,
The wheels are
this
spinning.
kind of facilities director on board, that we can start looking at, peel away the big ones that are looming. You can't put them off another year and start planning for when they need to be replaced 10, 15, 20 years from now.
And also starting to get some savings. If we could find some energy savings would be awesome.
Yes, it's my main goal. I've already reached out to Eversource to try and get the city into some different programs that'll open up the door to more rebates and do more stuff in-house and not have to,
Good direction.
we can start to keep that money instead of paying others is my goal.
Yeah.
Can make it all
We
happen.
need to keep that money.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you. And we're very excited and we're glad to have him on board with us. Like he said, I think that he's going to more than save us, over the course of time. And I think it's a great move for the city at this point in time. So thank you.
Thank you, Ray. All right, moving into item 14. I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the IT director and purchasing agent to enter into a 60-month lease agreement with Automated Business Solutions ABS of Southington for a total amount of $97,261.80 to replace and service new multifunction copier devices configured with print and scan management software, and authorize the mayor to act on behalf of the city regarding the execution of a contract and its administration.
So moved.
Thank you. I heard Councilwoman Wagner and Councilman Waldron. So many W's. Questions on this? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 15, I'll entertain a motion, DC trip. It doesn't require a motion. The motion would actually come later. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Everbridge mass notification system?
Kevin's on for Everbridge right now.
Okay,
It
good.
looks like he's ready to go. So he's got a little presentation to show the council real quick. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer questions if Kevin can't.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My name is Kevin McManus. I'm the technical account manager from Everbridge assigned to the state of Connecticut. My primary project is the CT alert, the mass notification that you would get delivered from the state of Connecticut from your 911 center in an emergency. One of my coworkers, Lauren Hoover, she's an account executive. She's on West Coast. She has other commitments right now. But I want to just spend 2 or 3 minutes just to go over the program, what Everbridge has, what the CT alert program is, and what Torrington can benefit from getting their own. So I hope I'm allowed to share a screen if that's okay. And just make sure that was visible. That's okay. So the CT alert program, it's overseen by the state of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. It's known as a mass notification, an emergency notification system. The thing that sets CT alert different from any other programs is it's used for those life safety, immediate threat to one's property, an individual, or an area. We can do public notifications, we can do subscriptions. Right now, there's over 3.5 million contacts in the state of Connecticut database. The key to this, though, is it has to be sent through a 911 center, and it has to meet very specific criteria. That criteria is highlighted in the bottom. It has to do with the severity. The warning, is this a timely message? Is it going to protect the public? And are there other means to notify individuals? So over the last year, obviously public engagement, notifying the public of everything that was going on was a totally different world between COVID, between weather events, between civil unrest, just an absolute upside down, for everybody, for Everbridge, for CT Alert, and all the other programs out there. But what we need to do going forward, it's a whole new world, is we need to make sure that we can engage the public, engage the residents, not only times of these CT Alert, life safety emergency messages, but on a daily basis or down to an hourly basis. So one of the things you cannot do with CT Alert is send out messages that don't meet this criteria, something like a water main break, something that there's a road closure, and all you're trying to do is direct people to another direction. That's where coming up with your own alert system, your own notifications will be important. And again, I reiterate, CT Alert's not going away. It's available from the 911 center. My rule of thumb when I do training with people is, would you knock on somebody's door at 3 o'clock in the morning to deliver a message? If the answer is yes, then you would be using CT Alert. If your criteria is, well, I'm not sure, or no, I wouldn't knock on the door, then you need to come up with your own internal notification system. So Everbridge provides notifications not only by the standard telephone or by email, but obviously by text message. We have our own branded mobile app. We also integrate directly with social media, and this has been very big for leaders across across the state, across the country. Is when you send out a notification now, you don't have to go to 3 or 4 different portals to send this message out. Directly from Everbridge, directly from your notification, you'll be able to send that out based on its priority. So if you're sending something about a water main break and you want that just to go to a certain area or a certain neighborhood, you can target just those individuals. You can target their email. This might be worth a phone call in the middle of the afternoon. Make sure that they're aware that the water might be dirty. If it's something along the lines of Litchfield Street is going to be closed near the Naugatuck River, is it necessary for a phone call, or is this just an email, text, and a social? So you decide how, you decide where, you decide when those messages go out. Little background on Everbridge in Connecticut. Over 59 towns have their own instance, their own notification system, including 35 state agencies. Second half of the screen are some of the big cities around that we have a presence, plus statewide accounts. So Connecticut was actually the first Everbridge statewide deployment, but since then, Massachusetts, Vermont, New York, New Jersey, Florida, most recently Oregon and California. So we like to be able to blend these notifications from a local basis. So again, if you want to send out notifications, something happening in your community, whether it's something that's going to impact individuals, all the way up to there's an emergency where you need to evacuate and you need to shelter in place, lost or missing children, something along those lines, we'll be able to integrate that from your own notification system right up through CT Alert. So some of the other benefits is your messages will come from the city of Torrington. Right now, a message comes out through the CT Alert system. It's coming on behalf of the state of Connecticut because of the criteria. It's coming from ctalert.gov. It's coming from a state of Connecticut telephone number. In this case, you'd be able to do your own branded messages. You'd be able to send them through their own delivery pass. If the mayor's office wants to send a message to individuals who signed up for the mayor's newsletter just by email, you can send it to them. However, if there's going to be a closure of the library, City Hall, because of a power problem, or they had to, some work is going on and you had appointments or you had council meetings that need to be relocated, you need to get that message out. Now you can send it out by email, text, or even telephone call if necessary. All of these messages, all these signups are all based on roles and rights. So you can give the library director rights to send messages to people who have signed up for library notifications. You could link it to their social media pages. And if the mayor needed to send out a message, she could send it out to all these groups, being a large umbrella, and also tag all of their social medias. Residents can opt in. This is a pretty common. I know that you have that on your webpage right now through Civic Plus, I believe is your web host, where you can sign up for different types of notifications. But we could include, as I mentioned before, the different delivery paths, a different way to get that message out in a very large umbrella. So those are just some of the examples of messages that people have done recently. Anybody who signs up for City of Torrington notifications would actually be rolled up on a regular basis to CT alerts. So if you were needed to send out that emergency notification in the 911 center, so it meets the criteria, meets Title 28 of Connecticut statutes for shelter in place, evacuate, duck and cover, any of that criteria, or Amber Alert, like we had at the beginning of the month, anybody who opted into Torrington or anybody who opted into CT Alert, you fall within that geographical space, you would get notified. I believe that, again, my partner, Lauren, had forwarded the quote, and that is a 3-year contract. It does not change. It locks in that price for the full 3 years. It also includes 10 hours of implementation. So whoever the project leaders are, we're going to have 10 hours of dedicated training, set up how to, and customize it to your city for your notifications if you choose. So I'm open to any questions. I'm sure the deputy chief can answer them too. So.
Thank you. Nice to burn right through those. I would only add when Chief Talley and Deputy Chief Tripp were bringing this idea forward with department heads that were participating in hearing what this program would bring. We were coming off of the heels of Isaias. And that was a perfect example of when we needed to send out blast notifications for things that were specific to the city of Torrington, such as if you are on a well system and your electricity is out, there is an emergency water station at West Torrington. There was no way for us to get those kinds of messages out. We could put them on Facebook, but a lot of people don't read Facebook, or they're not subscribers to, any of the social media that the city uses. They don't listen to WZBG. So things like that are critical information for our residents. We just really couldn't push it out. And so we see a great benefit in this alert system. And Deputy Chief, I'm not sure if there's anything.
We've actually Kevin, block your ears for a second, but we actually stretched that boundary of the bottom that he showed you for the CT alerts with the water main break up on Highland Ave.
That's right.
Where they had to boil water. So we had different things that we are out that actually worked with LC downstairs, and we actually drew out a polygon and said, okay, these are the ones we got to be notified based on the water company. It's a water company issue because they're private, but it's our citizens. So we want to make sure under the emergency management, we took care of our own people. So we were able to use that, and it works very well. I also have the app for Department of Public Health, all the EMS notifications I get on the administration side. The app's nice. It's all written right there. There's no recordings, no nothing. You just check it, you receive it. It's a great program, and I think the city would benefit. Parking bans, Chief Baldwin or Lieutenant Johnson, their PIO can about parking bans. Boom, everybody wants to know about parking bans that are happening. Any major event downtown. I think it's a great asset to the city.
I think we work to notify CERT people too when you need them for an emergency. Mm-hmm. And I know several years ago, probably a long time longer than that, we had a standoff in my neighborhood with the police department and an upset person with a gun. And we got notifications by our phone, and that was so important for people to know about that because our backyard was abutting that situation. But no, I think this is an excellent plan.
Mary, you brought up a point about being able to notify your staff and employees, and I kind of went past it really quickly on one of my last slides, but there becomes two operational organizations. One that's public facing, being able to opt in, get those community notifications, but you also have a City of Torrington employee and staff notifications. So if you had to close an office building and you wanted to notify the staff, or you needed to do a recall for the fire department, or public works needed to get a hold of people, you would be able to use that operational instance of Everbridge to manage and notify your employees and your staff. And as the deputy chief said, coming across the mobile app, we can send polling notifications. Are you available to respond to this? Yes or no. Whoever's the message originator can look real quickly and be able to say, oh, I've got 3 people who said yes, and be able to interact with them directly. So I gave a 2-hour presentation in about 2.5 minutes, but being able to notify your staff and employees in addition to the citizens is pretty equal on on a day-to-day basis.
I even see that as being useful in public works projects. If you have road work that's happening in a particular area, it's an opportunity for us to target.
Yeah, notifications. So like you can, as you indicated, draw that geo fence. We're doing the North Bank construction. We put out a press release, but don't always listen to the radio, don't get it in paper. So we looked at it from that perspective. Changes in schedules, holiday collections for, for trash, anytime, any public press release that we put out. So from a public works perspective, we're very excited about it. The economic development, news bulletin, newsletters. So we just saw that it was a wide with the public portion and the community side of it. We really just saw a huge wide spectrum where to enhance our communications to our residents.
Well said. All right, if there are no further questions on that, we can move into the action item, which is item number 16. I will entertain a motion to approve the 36-month contract with Everbridge for a total amount of $37,017.32 to be paid from our CRF funds for the Everbridge Mass Notification System Pro software, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract and agreement.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner,
Second.
and seconded by Councilman Cavanero. Other questions or comments on the motion, the contract, or the amount? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 17, I'll entertain a motion by the City Council here enacting as a WPCA to approve the following payments from Fund 490 Sanitary Sewer Capital Improvement. It's Yield Industries for $1,949. Vanessa Hangen Bruslin, Inc., $3,371.84. Wright Pierce Engineers, $2,095.12. The Torrington Water Company for $10,760.36 and $2,188.26 respectively. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Cavanero. And I heard second by Councilman Waldron. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 18, I'll entertain a motion to accept Corporation Council's recommendation and authorize the mayor pursuant to CGS Section 12-179 to release the liens described in Attorney Michelle's memo dated June 21st, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you. Councilman Waldron, seconded by Councilman Cavanero. Questions on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 19, I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the tax collector and authorize the tax refunds indicated on the list dated June 21st, 2021.
Move 19.
Thank you, Councilman Rubino.
Second.
And seconded by Councilman Cavanero. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 20. I'll entertain a motion by the City Council here enacting as a WPCA to accept the recommendation of the tax collector and authorize the sewer use refunds indicated on list dated June 21, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner.
Second.
And seconded by Councilman Rubino. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 21, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by department heads.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Councilman Rubino, second by Council Cavanero. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I see Carrie is sitting here so patiently. You have anything to add this evening?
As of July 1st, adult adoptees can now get their birth certificate from us. They can currently get it from the state, but the state has no time frame. They can take as long as they want. I had a customer in the office today. He's from Boston, and he was blown away that he walked in the door, asked for his birth certificate, and was handed his birth certificate. I said, welcome to a small town, Also, in the 1st of July, marriage licenses will no longer have race written on them, and we're glad to see that. It was just demographic that we didn't care to collect. In October, bride and groom will be eliminated. It's going to be spouse one and spouse two. So, couples can start off their marriage life arguing about who's number one and who's number two. We're up to 825 dog tags, 825 beer coupons also. We've been giving those out over the past 3 weeks. It's about a third of what we expect to do.
We have
And-
addresses for the dog owners.
Yes.
They can reach out for contribution.
Yeah. And we were all very sorry to hear of the passing of Ado Benetti. He was the city clerk for 10 years, and while none of us had the pleasure of working with him, we know that he was a legend and he was loved and admired by all. So I just wanted to make note of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And a veteran, loved and respected. Penny, anything from purchasing? Nothing? Ray, anything else from Public Works? Anything else from the fire department? We're good. Jamie, any last thoughts, comments? All right. Vic?
No, thank you.
All right. Good. I've tortured everyone enough, right? 22, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by the mayor and members.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner, seconded by Councilman Cavanero. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
All right, starting with my members on Zoom. Anything this evening, Councilman Waldron?
Oh, yeah, it's a big day today.
All right,
I'm officially retired.
another one.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So are you coming to a meeting now?
I couldn't hear that.
Okay.
He's retired.
He wanted to know if you'll be coming to the meeting.
You know, I almost got there tonight, but I
That's all right.
actually didn't have a rested day today. I was running around crazy, moving out and doing all kinds of things. So I still have to go in tomorrow, but I'm officially retired. So that's good. That's a good thing.
Congratulations.
It's a good run.
Yep, thank you.
Councilman Oliver?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Councilwoman Wagner?
Just two things. One comment, how nice to see a young woman like Bailey Honey come in
Yes.
tonight and to speak up as well as she did and express her feelings and have all that information. I'm really impressed when young people can do that. The other question, Mayor, was just, are we going to be doing any economic development committee or commission appointments?
Yes. So during the pandemic, it was very difficult for us to get anybody that was, honestly, we're struggling finding people to work in our summer camp programs, so all around. But yes, we are doing, and I know there was one individual that you had recommended.
Right.
We wanted to bring him in.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilman Rubino.
Nothing there.
Councilman Cavanero.
Nothing really.
All right, well then, there being no further business before the board, I'll entertain motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner, seconded by Councilman Waldron. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Have a good night, everybody.
Night.
Yeah.